To this budget session on direct tax organized jointly by WIC and Chamber of Tax Consultants. Probably this is the 15th year we have the joint meeting of the WIC and Chamber. This was the first budget of the Narendra Modi government, and everyone expecting some big bang announcements. As soon as budget was delivered, few said that this is 10 out of, started ranking the budget. Ranking came from 1 out of 10 and to 10 out of 10. This was perception of the people, what the budget is there for them. Because when we hear the finance minister's speech, he spoke many things. Probably I believe this was the first time in the budget speech he tried to mix with direct tax, indirect tax simultaneously. He was saying one provision of direct tax, another one was some indirect taxes. He brought many announcements on the front, like amending section 6 of FEMA. Universally, everywhere there is always a fight between the governor of the central bank and the finance ministers. They both move in different directions. They both may be correct, but still each other feel that they are wrong. Many such things came here also in this budget. Government said that they have made the increase the deficit in this budget with the reason that they want to do capital investments, so that's why deficit has been increased. At the same time, even though deficit has been increased, but we don't know whether this will culminate into the growth, because that time will only say us what is going to be growth there. On direct tax front, there are many proposals which has been tried to overrule decisions. As Bansi Bhai told in one of his at the WRC seminar that 30 decisions has been overruled in this budget. So whoever be the government, be the Congress government, UP or NDA, the legacy of overruling decision continues here also. But good part is that some of the decisions which are in the favor of SSC, they try to bring in the law, wherein those decisions become the part of law now. The position has been accepted. One thing can be said, one can say that the government is keen on reducing litigation. Even if we see some indirect tax provisions, they try to bring down litigation. They try to the place where there is a distinction, where the two views are possible, they try to take one view. This may be favor of SSC or in the favor of department. There is a different thing. So they are trying to reduce litigation. I'm also happy to say that a couple of provisions are there in this finance bill, which was suggested by the chamber in this pre-budget memorandum, and we had discussion with the budget making team, and those are accepted. For example, in the domestic transfer pricing, the chamber has suggested the limit should be at least, the first of the suggestion was that where there is a tax neutral transactions, where they are both the parties are in the same tax bracket, the domestic transfer pricing should not be applicable. But the alternative was given that at least the limit of transaction 5 crores should be made 25 crores. At least they accepted to some extent to 20 crores. We are in the process of making a post-budget memorandum, and if you have any suggestions, you can share with us so that it can be considered. Because one thing is that the government is in the hearing mode, if we see, because many of the changes which are there for the which is applicable FII, you can see that the Jayant Sinha's, because Jayant Sinha himself was a fund manager at a point of time, and he experienced what difficulties faced by the fund manager or the fund houses, and many of those changes have been incorporated in this finance bill, which the speakers per day will deal with those things. But this is, for example, under P, the fund manager who is there, who is managing the fund from outside, but for the investments in India, he can't sit in India because of the tax provisions. They brought in the provision where say even though fund manager is in India, it will not be considered as a PE. But this amendment what has been made is not sufficient. Certainly it is giving rise to many other issues. Anyway, they have understood something and tried to brought in. So if many other things which are there, we find that amendments need to be made. We may bring light to the government, probably they may be heard this time or next time, because this will meet to Dunia Kayam hai, and with this Narendra Modi government we have more hopes. With this viewers, I welcome you to this direct tax provisions on the budget seminar jointly with WRC and ICA. May I request Kriti Savla, member WRC, to say a few words.
Respected Shri Kishore Bhai, Yogesh Bhai, Gautam Bhai, Paras, Ketan Bhai, seniors in the profession, my dear friends, I welcome you all to this seminar which is jointly organized by WRC and Chamber since last 15 years, as has been already announced, and as Finance Minister Arun Jaitley has announced, they are going to celebrate Amrit Mahotsav. And very near future, I wish we will also celebrate this program as a Silver Jubilee program, jointly organized by both the organization. Coming to the budget, I am not going to speak much because we have the stalwarts in the profession to address us all. So, but I have taken over, our WRC team has changed very recently. I have taken over chairpersonship as a Direct Tax Committee, and the very first job what we had to come out with a publication of on a budget booklet, and that we already done successfully. We released it on Bansibhai Mehta's public meeting program, and which has already been circulated to all. As government has announced that as it is round the clock, round the year government, I believe this committee will also be working round the clock, round the year. So I invite suggestions from all of you present here. We are also planning to come out with certain publications which will be helpful to all members in the profession. So I request all of you to please give your suggestion in direct tax so that we can come out with a publication as well as hold programs so that it benefit to the members at large. So friends, coming back to the program, I welcome you all. And I thank all the stalwarts to accept our request to address, to analyze and give their views, share their knowledge. Thank you all, sir. And I request Ketan Bhai to carry out and introduce them formally. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Respected Shri Kishore Bhai, Gautam Bhai, Yogesh Bhai, Paras, Kriti Savla, seniors and friends. My task is to introduce the three eminent personalities between us today. And I will be starting with our chairman, Shri Kishore Bhai Kalia. Kishore Bhai Kalia is a senior technical advisor of PwC since July 2011. He has been practicing as a chartered accountant since 3 decades, more than 3 decades now. He has been chairman of the International Tax Committee of the BCA. He has been a former president of the BCA Society. He has been a former chairman and presently a member of the Taxation Committee of the BCA Society. He has been a member of the editorial board of the BCA Society since many years. He is regularly contributing in 2 columns of BCA, which I at least very fondly read. Closement and glimpses of Supreme Court rulings, they are very useful when we read them. He is a former vice president of Bombay Shareholders Association, a former treasurer and presently a member of the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal Bar Association Mumbai, former head of the Accountancy Department of MMK College. He has participated in so many seminars that if I count, probably we'll end a seminar on that only. So many seminars, so many conferences, so many RRC papers which he has addressed and which we have been benefited since many years. With this very few words, and of course not to forget, he has written many, co-authored many books like Survey Search and Caesar, then Tax Audit Manual, so on and so forth. He is the chairman for today's session, so we are really happy that you agreed to chair the session. I would request our President Paras Bhai to please offer a memento to Kishore Bhai as a mark of our love and respect to him. Coming to two speakers for the day, this gentlemen have been with us since many years. As we said, this program has been now in the 15th year. Probably I feel around last 7-8 years, these gentlemen have been with us always on this program. But just to formally introduce, coming first to CA Gautam Nayak. He is a partner in the firm Contractor Nayak and Krishnawala, which is now an LLP. He is a rank holder at both intermediate and final CA examination. He has been also president of the Bombay Chartered Accountants Society in 2004-5, and he has been editor of the joint and editor as well as joint editor of the BCA Journal from 2005 to 2010. He is currently a chairman of the Taxation Committee of the Bombay Chartered Accountants Society and also a member of the Direct Tax Committee of Indian Merchant Chamber. He has co-authored many books, including Transaction in Shares and Securities, Taxation of Charitable Trust, etc. He has also delivered a lot of conferences and a lot of talks. He has done all across the India. We are really fortunate that we have an eminent person like Gautam Bhai amongst us. I would request again Priti Bhai to please offer a memento to Gautam Bhai, please. Our other speaker for the day is Shri C.A. Yogesh Thar. He is currently a partner of C.S. Mehta and Company, a leading firm of chartered accountancy. He is a fellow member of the institute and he has got a rich blend of income tax and service tax as the knowledge base which he has. He has specialized in the areas of business mergers, acquisitions, restructuring, business valuation, corporate taxation, etc. International taxation, of course. He started his career with Messrs. S.V. Batalia and Company. Thereafter, for around a decade, he was a proprietor of his own firm and presently a partner of C.S. Mehta since 1997. He has also authored several books on and written several articles on direct tax and double tax avoidance agreement, etc., which are published mainly in Taxman, the Chambers Journal, the BCA Journal, etc. He was a visiting faculty at the Narsimha College of Narsimha Institute of Management Studies since 1992 to 1997. He served as the joint editor of BCA Society's publication, the References on Diary, which we are all having use of from 1997 to 2008. Presently, he is a member of the Managing Committee of the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal Bar Association and also a member of Taxation Committee of BCA Society and member of our own Direct Tax Committee of the Chamber of Tax Consultants. We are really thankful to Yogesh Bhai. We are really thankful to Yogesh Bhai for accepting our invitation and speaking on this forum for years and years now. I would request our past President Ajit Rohira to please offer a memento to Yogesh Bhai. I would request the chairman of the session, Shri Kishore Bhai, to take charge of the proceedings.
President of the Chamber, Mr. Savla, two very good dear friends, I would say, Gautam and Yogesh. And in fact, if they are the speakers, I don't know whether the chairman would require. And of course, the participants. Before 28th of February, almost for a month or little more, as if something is going to happen in this country on 28th February. all channels, all newspapers, everybody used to talk about only one thing, and that is budget. As if budget is only one event in this country which is going to change everything and fate of this nation. The different people in different spheres of life will have a different interest in that budget again. The businessman looks for himself something, and the professionals look for themselves something, and of course the general public, for whom perhaps there is nobody to voice, have different expectations. In fact, on 27th February, all of us thought that for the whole month of March, we will have no other time except to read budget. Thinking that perhaps large number of seminars were organized, rather planned in advance. Various representations were made. The effect of representation in this country, at least from the citizens when it comes to the North Block and South Block, is not worth discussing. Paras made a reference to an achievement of Chamber in terms of representation in the context of domestic transfer pricing. But I am sure that the Chamber has made large number of representations, so is the BCAs, and so is perhaps the Institute and WRC. And if you start counting that and listing them, how many representations were genuinely made which require a genuine amendment, of which what percentage has really come. My experience in this field is for last perhaps more than 3 decades is that it is the lobby which works. And that is borne out by what the President stated in his initial remark, that Mr. Jayant Sia is a fund manager, so funds have got everything, and others have got no fund. And perhaps some are making fun of what is happening. As I mentioned that large number of seminars were planned on the budget, and on 28th we are thinking that what is going to be the fate of those seminars now. At least knowing on a macro level the type of amendments, though at micro level there could be large number of things which one can say, but at macro level people were thinking that the interest of people will now no more remain, and perhaps that gets reflected in the enrollment at different places in the seminar. I for one has always been thinking and waiting for a day that there should not be any seminar on the budget. That's the type of budget which should come. I do not know during my professional career such a budget will be presented by any of the finance ministers. Mr. Palkhiwala's book's title is Income Tax Law and Practice. I do not know to what extent law works, to what extent practice works, either in terms of real life or in terms of budget making. And that speaks for itself number of things. I was just trying to have a look at, because we had a meeting in the VCA for deciding the points for the representation, etc. And also last Sunday, when we were to prepare that small booklet which we come out with. So ultimately, we had planned for almost, I think, 4 hours, isn't it, Gokul, today. We became free in 2.5 hours, So we're thinking now what to do. We had to come here at 2:30. So in that sense, perhaps this budget brings out less worthwhile amendments, let me put it as. On every amendment which has been made, something has to be said. You have some issues and which may need discussion. I was trying to summarize that under how many captions perhaps you can divide these direct text amendments which have been proposed. So about 9 to 10 captions under which perhaps you can think of if you go topic wise. The first and foremost perhaps which affects the foreign investors, and perhaps largely, rightly or wrongly, the thrust of the direct tax amendment seemed to be in this area of the budget. the type of amendments which they have made, on which, of course, the Yogesh is likely to speak more, and will bring out the issues which are arising therefrom. So right from attempting to remedy the situation which was created by a finance minister in 2012, for his good work, he got elevated to the post of President of India. We are still trying to understand what is stated at that time. Even the current finance minister perhaps did not understand the implication of what damage has been done by the amendments which were made in the year 2012. Unfortunately, in 2012, it is because of the Vodafone's impact and discussion at TV levels, there were a large number of other retrospective amendments which were made in the Finance Act 2012, and hardly anybody is talking about it. Hardly anybody is trying to remedy those situations which have come up, say for example in the arena of section 916, the amendments relating to royalty, the amendments relating to transfer pricing, the definition of international transactions. So nobody is talking about, and if you don't complain in this country, nothing happens. And that's why I was saying earlier, that is the lobby which works. If you don't have a lobby, perhaps you cannot get things done right. That's a very unfortunate situation, but that's the situation in which we have been living. We have the next set of topics, charity. I don't exactly remember the words which Mr. Balkewala has used in his book, but it's worth reading is in one of his preface, where he is saying that the Income Tax Act is a national disgrace. And then the example for supporting that statement which is giving is the number and type of amendments which have been made in the area of charity. So charity does get attention of the income tax of the government, but perhaps for the wrong reasons than for the right reasons. Gautam, of course, will explain to us the impact thereof. We have few things, of course, in the area of business income. We have so many in number in terms of personal taxation, nothing really emerging out of the amendments which are made in the personal taxation. In fact, what one says on the platform, what one says in the memorandum sometimes does not feature in the real amendments, to which Gautam, I am sure, will make a reference when it comes to Mediclaim deductions which they have made. We have quite a few amendments made in tax deduction at source and so on. We have a very obnoxious amendment in section 263. The impact thereof, of course, the Gautam will discuss in the course of our discussion. We have, of course, certain penalty provisions. But I am not bothered about these all amendments. I think larger picture is about the statement which he has made with regard to a comprehensive law which is likely to come in the name of, or for the reasons of, for checking the black money. The features of the law which he has narrated, the law is yet to come. I think they are frightening. I do not know, by frightening the people, can you really check the menace of black money? Large number of things are required to be done in terms of implementation of the income tax law, and if the laws were properly implemented, perhaps we would not have reached to the situation where we have reached today. They also made an amendment, quite a few amendments in the prevention of, they are making, sought to be made, Prevention of Money Laundering Act, Foreign Exchange Management Act, and I think each one of those amendments we need to consider an impact thereof in our day-to-day life. The abator is also likely to be included now when it comes to this comprehensive law and PML Act. An abator, perhaps, they have given, of course, the example for banking and financial institutions, but I would feel that at times the professionals also will have to be very careful, because the intermediaries are also likely to be affected. So we have, of course, Yogesh and Gautam to speak on us. I am told that Yogesh is largely going to deal with the amendments affecting what we call it as international tax, and rest of them are going to be considered by the Gautam within the time which is allotted to him. So may I request Yogesh to make a beginning on the area of international tax and other topics eloquently. Thank you.
Respected Chairman Kishore Rai, President Bharat, dear friend Gautam, seniors in the profession, ladies and gentlemen. Many questions were raised and many questions get raised. After having heard the budget speech, you open up the finance bill and start reading, and you find that the many things that he said in the budget speech don't find place in the finance bill. How come? There are many things which are there in the finance bill, they were never said in the budget speech. How's that? There are many amendments that have been made. We don't know what's the meaning of it, why was it really required. Then you open up explanatory memorandum and start reading what are the rationale. We find, is that really the rationale? Is there a catch? Is there something different behind? So on and so forth. So today here we are with so many questions in our head. And therefore let me start off with a small poetry, which I placed in fact on my desk at home. At home you need to be more philosophical rather than in office. So I placed it at home. I'll just read it out for the benefit of all. It says, be patient towards all that is unresolved in your heart. Try to love the questions themselves. Do not now seek the answers which cannot be given, because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Live, not leave. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will then, gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answers. That's a poetry by a renowned author and poet named Rilke. So with this, let's live with those questions. Let's understand what are the questions going on in our minds. Probably live with those questions. Maybe someday in the coming future, you will get some answers to it. Let us start off first with the residential status. And again a question arises, was this amendment really required? We are told that the test for determining the period of stay in India of an individual being a citizen of India and a member of a group of foreign-bound ship leaving India in respect of such voyage shall now be prescribed. And we are told that this is with a view to avoid uncertainties, and the amendments come into effect from assessment year 2016. What is this all about? What is the present provision dealing with residential status of individual? It says that a person physically present in India for 182 days in a given year would be a resident. And we also have a condition that if that individual in the past 4 years was present in India for 365 days or more, and in the given year he is present in India for 60 days, he would still be a resident. That 60 days period has been extended to 182 days for a couple of people. One of the type of persons for which that 60 days become 182 days is a member of a group of an Indian ship that leaves India and such a member of a crew of an Indian ship which leaves India during a year, if that person is present in India for more than 60 but less than 180, he would still be regarded as a non-resident, even though in the past 4 years he has been in India for 365 days or more. That's the law as on today. And yes, there were some hiccups on how to count that 182 days. And when I read the explanatory memorandum, I felt that they are going to prescribe rules to avoid some uncertainties. But the biggest uncertainty probably to my mind is what are the rules that they are going to prescribe. To my mind, insofar as individuals stay in India is concerned, counting the number of days is concerned, the law is today pretty clear. There were cases which were borderline cases, whether it is 182 or whether it is 183, etc. And in that context, what is important is the provisions of Section 9 of the General Clauses Act, which really tells you how does one compute. As per the General Clauses Act, you compute the number of days by eliminating the first day and including the last day. You can't include both the terminal dates, and that is how you compute the number of days in any central law. That's the General Clauses Act would say, which applies to every central act. We had an advance ruling where somehow a view was taken that no, you have to count both the days, and as a result of that, that 182 would become 183 and the person would become a resident even though he was a non-resident. Later on, unfortunately, advance ruling did not consider the provision of the General Clauses Act. Later on, we had this decision of the Bangalore bench of the tribunal in tax case which considered the General Clauses Act, which considered a Delhi High Court decision which was rendered in the context of some other law, which followed the methodology provided in the General Clauses Act, how does one compute the number of days. And they said that no, you have to count the number of days based on the fact that only one of the two dates are to be considered, one is to be excluded. The date of entry into India to be excluded, date of exit will be included. To my mind, the law was fairly well settled. Now they are saying that in respect of this type of individual who is a crew of the Indian ship, or who is a crew of a ship which is foreign bound, for that person, we will now prescribe rules as to how does one compute the number of days. And there are several issues which arise insofar as this provision is concerned. First of all, that 60 to 182 days test that we just spoke about, that applies to a crew member of an Indian ship. That is the language of that explanation which is presently there in the statement. Whereas this particular provision which says that we will make rules, it says it applies to every crew member of a foreign bound ship. So he may be a crew member not necessarily of an Indian ship. He may be a crew member of a foreign ship who is a citizen of India. If that citizen of India is a crew member of a foreign ship and that foreign ship is a foreign bound ship, then this new provision will apply to it. So it's not necessarily that it will apply only to those categories of people to whom that first explanation applies. There are certain additional type of people who are covered within the new provision or the new provision where the rules have to be prescribed. Interestingly, there are some 16 provisions in the Act, in this finance bill, where they have said that we will prescribe rules. So whatever could not be done in the Act, now they left it to the CBDT to prescribe rules. And as I said, the biggest uncertainty is what rules they will prescribe, which we really do not know at this time. Secondly, what rules they are going to prescribe in this context? To count the number of days stay in India in respect of foreign bound ship, in respect of such voyage. I read it and reread it, but I am still not able to understand, therefore there is a question in my mind. That when you are talking of a foreign bound ship, that ship is leaving the shores. And that is the voyage that you are talking about, the voyage from India to outside India. Now, in respect of such voyage, how can you compute the number of days stay in India? It can only be number of days stay outside India in respect of such voyage. So difficult to understand the plain language of the section. Insofar as the normal citizen is concerned, things are pretty clear. You look at the endorsement on the passport, the date on which the ship is going to sail, and that becomes the date up to which he is in India. And then when he comes back, the date of entry is endorsed in the passport, and that is how you normally compute. To my mind, that should also be the way in which the number of days should be computed insofar as a crew of a ship is concerned. But I am told that there may be some difficulty in this case. So say for example, a ship has started from the Mumbai port, it will go via Cochin to say Sri Lanka. So then for the period between Mumbai and Cochin, he will still be in India, and then thereafter the ship will sail outside India, and therefore there may be some complications, but I guess that complications would be equally there for a normal citizen, not just a crew member of a ship. But anyway, I'm only worried as to what sort of micro management of these issues the government is going to make, what sort of rules they are going to prescribe. Now, technically, I was just trying to visualize that in respect of such voyage, meaning in respect of a voyage where the ship has left the Indian shores and it is going, it's an outbound, it's a foreign bound ship that we are talking about in this section. In respect of that voyage, what is the number of days stay in India that one can visualize? One can only visualize the number of days stay in India, being the period during which that ship has not crossed the territorial waters of India. Maybe. But so that's really an aspect of micromanagement. We want everything to be very clear by rules, but we all know that by making rules, how many things become unclear. Huge litigations in 80s and 90s on Ventex rules, huge litigations for last 10 years in respect of Rule 8D, and so on and so forth. So, anyway, be that as it may, that's the provision that we are today with. We are told that in respect of such crew member, rules will be prescribed. We'll talk more about it as and when the rules come. Let's go to the second one. OM. On 28th February late night, I was sitting at home. Home Wi-Fi was on. I was downloading something. After downloading something, I saved it in a file. I gave them the file name Poem, P-O-E-M. My wife just came there and asked me, "You're downloading poems, what are you doing?" I said, "No, I'm not downloading poems." "What is poem?" I said, "It's place of effective management." "What is place of effective management?" I thought for a while and told her, "Okay, tell me who is the head of the family?" She said, "Yeah, maybe you, but you may be the head of the family, but I am the neck of the family, I can twist the head wherever I want." So I said, that is exactly the difference between the head and the control and management is in the head, but the place of effective management is the neck. The husband may be regarded as control and management, but the effective management is with the wife. So that is how I explained her, and probably that is how I understood the concept myself. What is the present law for residential status of a company? A company is regarded as resident in India if it is an Indian company, or if its control and management is wholly situated in India. So the present requirement is control and management wholly situated in India. So if there is a foreign company whose control and management is partly outside India, it's clearly a non-resident company from the Indian tax point. What was this concept of control and management? The concept of control and management was fairly well settled by now. For years there was litigation, but issues well settled. place where a board sits, prepare boards, have board meetings, prepare board minutes, make sure that the board minutes are not in India, board meets outside India, decisions are taken outside India, so therefore control and management outside India, you cannot be regarded as resident of India. The government doesn't like this. And we are told that now this concept of control and management will be replaced by the concept of place of effective management. The intention, as reflected in the explanatory memorandum, is to ensure that by merely holding board meetings outside India, a company should not be regarded as a resident, as a non-resident, although in substance is effective management is in India. I believe Chamber together with IFA had a meeting with the members of the CBDT on the within 1 or 2 days of the budget announcement in Delhi. And so these issues were discussed. One of the major issues which was discussed was the words "at any time during the previous year." The section says that is the place of effective management is in India at any time during the previous year, at any time, even for 1 hour, 1 day. Then that company can be regarded as a resident of India. So a foreign company whose place of effective management, we'll see what that concept is, but whose place of effective management at any time during the year is in India, then that company will be regarded as a resident for that whole year, and that entire world income will be taxed in India for that whole year. So I understand that there was a lot of discussion on this issue, that why you need this at any time during the year. And there were several other issues which were discussed, and what I read, I'll just point out what I read from Tax Sutra. I'll just read out that the CBDT clarifies that this place of effective management concept is really targeted to Indian companies holding board meetings abroad. So they are, in substance, they are Indian companies. They are just showing board meetings held outside India and therefore intending to be non-residents. We are told that the rules will be framed, guidelines will be issued as to how should this term be interpreted. We are told that a very little leeway will be available, not much discretion will be available to the SEC officers, and the detailed guidelines will be prepared. The emphasis is really on